All right. I
Hello,
think we're live.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. And Wouter, welcome to the big screen, or maybe the medium screen.
thank you. Good morning. I think most of us, and if not, good afternoon.
Great to see you, Wouter, and thanks
Thanks.
for coming on today.
Likewise.
Yeah. And for anyone watching, welcome to our second live office hours. Excited to be putting this on and excited to be having a conversation today with Wouter Potman of Sento out of Medellin, Colombia.
Excited as well. I feel like a small boy that is having his birthday the next day.
Yeah, well,
Well,
unfortunately, the presents that we shipped you got stuck in the chip shortage. They're on a boat somewhere in the Suez Canal. Sorry about that.
All right, right.
and we're honored to have you on. So I think to get us kicked off, maybe Daniel, can you say a couple words about the series, and then I'll introduce Wouter.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, in today's conversation, like I said, this is our second of our weekly live streamed series. This is live streamed in that it's going to LinkedIn Live, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live. And I can see we have some guests saying hello. Christina, we're excited to have you here as well. So that means this is unedited, unscripted, and we get to just spend some time with Wouter in an informal way and hopefully learn some stuff. Today, we're going to be talking about manufacturing operations. Wouter's an expert in manufacturing ops, logistics ops, worked at beer brewing, worked in high complexity Internet of Things. So we're going to be talking about how to set up a production line. We're going to talk about what companies need to be thinking about as they get ready for their first manufacturing run. And we're also going to just explore a little bit with Wouter what it's like working in Colombia, and specifically the tax-free zone near the airport in Medellin. So there should be a couple fun topics we can hit there. For the live stream, we really encourage everyone to be part of this office hours with us. So Danny and I can rattle off question after question. We're ready to do that, but we really want to hear from the folks that are joining in. If you're making a product, if you're getting ready for manufacturing, if you run a manufacturing company, feel free to leave a chat or a question in any of the LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook threads. Danny, we can also get people up here live, right? How does that work again?
Yeah, so if you would like to come up live and ask a question to Wouter, you can actually just DM me or direct message me on Facebook or LinkedIn, and I will send you a link to invite you up on the screen here.
Cool. So then the last thing I want to share before we dive in is we just this week launched our content and community pages for this series and for some of the other events that we're running with Ioterra as well. So I'll share my screen with you to show you what it looks like. The URLs there across the bottom, community.ioterra.com. And within these community pages, for each one of these office hour events, we'll have the highlights of the show featured here. So you can see there's Wouter, there's already some conversation thread about the initial introduction to his office hours. If there's any questions that maybe you don't get a chance to ask during office hours, or like me, you think of a really good question 30 minutes too late, the party's going to continue on. So you'll be able to ask questions in the thread. Wouter will be here monitoring, engaging, and this should be fun. We have Kyle Visners here from last week. So Kyle last week talked about IoT software development and provided a whole bunch of strategies for how to be efficient and thoughtful about how to do device development. Some of the highlights from his show are here in the community forum, as well as some of the discussion on the threads here. So as well, if you have questions for Kyle, you can find it in community.ioterra. We also have our IoT Recon events here and various other Internet of Things topics that are being discussed in these forums. So I can't think of anything else, Danny. Do you got anything?
No, let's dive right in. And so I'd like to just start kind of introducing Wouter. So Wouter Potman is actually quite amazing. How many languages do you know, Wouter? 5 or even more than that?
No, I would say 5. Not, of course, not all of them to the same level, but yeah, 5.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you talk a little bit about that. But first, just a little bit about your background. You went to school in Prague and then in Rotterdam, correct, with a focus in logistics management and business administration?
Yeah, correct. I studied in Rotterdam, and the part in Czech Republic was like an exchange program for a few months. So I made a small sidestep before returning to Rotterdam.
And then you got kind of kicked off into, how do you pronounce this? Kuehne+Nagel?
Kuehne+Nagel is like one of the biggest logistics service providers in the world, originally from Germany, with their head office, I think, in Austria. So yeah, great company to start with, very organized, very European, but they're in all the world. They're in the US, they're in Colombia, they're everywhere.
And that kind of kick-started you over into the HEINEKEN Company, where you really played a big role in the introduction of the Star bottle.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
In Heineken, I started like in all kinds of planning roles, which was really useful to get to know the supply chain. So I had to plan raw materials, I had to plan production, I had to plan like the sales forecast. So I got to learn in a quick time all of the dimensions from the supply chain. But at that time, I got like the comments that I should work on my seniority. So I decided to take up a big challenge as a logistics project lead in the main office of Heineken in Zoeterwoude in the Netherlands. And there, one of the projects that I got, after finishing some other projects successfully, was the Star bottle. And it was actually really funny. The director at that time said, "Wouter, I've got this logistical problem. It seems perfect for you. You just have to change some bottles in some crates of beer." At the time, we had the brown bottles in the Netherlands. The whole world already had green bottles, except for the Netherlands. So he said, "You just have to change the brown bottles for the green bottles." And then when I started analyzing it, it came down to a changeover of like 14 million bottles a week. So that changes any logistical operation in like more a military operation. It was 2 million bottles a day.
Wow.
But it was, I think, the greatest project I did so far.
So, Wouter, I did the Heineken Museum in Amsterdam a couple of years ago, and I think I saw quite a few of those Star bottles there.
Yeah, and probably you not only saw them.
Yeah, that is a good point. I drank quite a few of them at the museum. Thanks for calling me out. I also think there was some brainwashing going on. I only drank Heineken for 3 or 4 months after that tour. I don't know why. And at some point, the effect wore off, but it was a very good tour.
Cool.
And so then just continuing on, you somehow made the leap from the actual logistics world to the electronics world. And can you talk a little bit about how you moved from there through DSM to Vontu?
When I was working at Heineken, that period, at one point I wanted to have a more managerial role, and at the same time in Heineken there was like a whole reorganization. So they told me, "Wouter, it's possible, but you have to wait at this point," and I didn't want to wait. So I said I will move to another company. So I made a very small step, and I thought it was a really cool company, but I made a big mistake there. It was not a company with a very nice culture, at least not for me. So I decided after a few months to go to DSM, which is also a very big multinational in the Netherlands. They're principally working in food and, let's say, materials. So, for example, they're the head producer of Kevlar in the world. And then I was working there 3 months, not 3 years. I was more or less ready for the next step. I was there the global planning manager for one of the business units. And then at that time, I encountered in the city where I was working a woman from Colombia, Julie. So we started dating, and from one thing it led to another, and we were happy together. And at one point, she had to go back, and we had to decide what to do. And first of all, of course, we were traveling back and forth. But it was getting more difficult and more difficult. So I said, "Okay, show me Colombia, and I can decide if I can work in Colombia," because for her it was a little bit more difficult to work in the Netherlands. So I think what Julie did was actually take a big loan with the whole family from a bank. So she showed me all the nice spots in Colombia. So we went to San Andres, Cartagena, like all the top spots you see in the touristical guides. I've been there. And of course, then I said, okay, I will go to Colombia. So I moved to Colombia in 2018. I studied first a few months of Spanish because it is very important in Colombia to learn Spanish because there's very little people that talk English very well. And I made myself a little bit more difficult. I probably could have easily worked in a multinational here in Medellin. But the family of my wife, Julie, is all from Colombia, of course, and I only speak Spanish. So more important for me was to learn Spanish because in the end I moved to Colombia for Julie and not for finding a job. So I had to find a small company where English was not the daily language, and I found that I think 7 months after arriving with the company of Bantu.
Okay, and so can you tell me a little bit about Vantu? And then now also exactly how Vantu kind of morphed into Sento.tech.
Cool. Yeah, when I started at Vantu, I was starting as I think it was called manufacturing supervisor or something similar. And what I found there was an operation in like three small offices in a rented building. So we were actually sharing the offices with other companies. And for example, we had the assembly operation in one office, and then if you had to go to the warehouse to get components, you had to walk over the hallway to another office. So yeah, it was not ideally. And I encountered an assembly operation that was, well, let's at least say not very organized. So maybe, Danny, this is the right time to show you the before picture of.
Yeah, let me pull that up right here. So this is what it looked like. Oh wait, this one I believe.
Yeah.
Boom.
And,
Yeah.
And Wouter, can you describe what Sento/Vantu did, during the time that this picture was taken?
Yeah. Sento as it at this moment of the picture was non-existent. So there was only Vantu. Bantu, I think this is also the point where I have to explain a little bit about the history of Vantu. Vantu is a startup from Medellin from 2015, founded by Germán Suárez and Nicolás Maya. Germán could not join this call, unfortunately, because he's with his family in Venezuela. But they started with sensors, and their original idea was to put them in agriculture. So temperature, humidity sensors, CO2, humidity, all kinds of sensors like that. But part of the family of both of them, because they're also family, Nicolas and Germán, is working at Premex. So they said, hey, we have a better idea. Why don't you put them in the farms that we have at Premex? Because they serve like animal feed to the protein industry.
And Premix is a very large company, correct?
Correct,
It's a
yeah.
conglomerate across the multiple countries.
Yeah, it's well, Premex itself is primarily based, of course, in Colombia and in Latin America. It's a Colombian multinational. But right now we all form part of the Illuma Alliance, which is even a bigger organization, and they're also in the US and in other parts of the world. We also have an office in North Carolina, so yeah, the organization is quite big. So they said at that time, put the sensors in the farms. We have the farms, so put them there, and you can test them without any problems. So that is how Vantu started. Well, from that point, the guys have been developing more products. So not only let's say the physiological sensors, but they, for example, also developed our two flagship products, which is called the Smart Weight and the Pig Vision. So for the guys that want to see later what is that exactly, you can see the videos on the website. But they are both created to weigh the animal. So the temperature sensors and all of the other sensors, they give a lot of information, but the most important information for the protein industry is, of course, weight. And another part of the group does a really cool thing, so they can relate all the information from the sensors, they can relate it, or they translate it actually to information. The poultry scale or the smart weight is a poultry scale, so it weighs birds. And the pig vision, well, I personally think that is the coolest one. It is a camera that you place in the barn of pigs, and you can weigh the pigs through various technologies that are combined in this equipment, and you can weigh the pigs without touching them. And well, part of the fun and also part of my learning journey was, I think in my first week, Herman and Nico sent me to a pig farm. And it was, yeah, I had to work in part of the development of the product. And I was in a farm where there were pigs of 60 kilos, trying, of course, in the beginning not to get dirty. But after I think 5 minutes, you just give it up and you get very dirty. But you immediately experience that it's difficult to push pigs already of 60 kilos into a direction of a traditional scale. Let alone if these are pigs of 100 kilos, and that's how big they can get, and especially in US. So it's not a very nice process, not for the people that have to do that, but especially also not for the animals. They get very stressed in this process, so they also can get a heart attack during the process. So we really did a revolution there in this product. So in the picture that Danny was just showing us, we're at the beginning of the transformation of the whole operation of Vantu. So I started with an operational excellence program about 2 years ago. And you can see here the guys that are preparing like the state of reference of their workstation. So what is the state of reference? They have to give everything a fixed place. So they don't need to search every time they're going to build something, and they don't have to search where's my equipment. And this is the part where we started. And you can see that the desks behind it, they're really disorganized. Everything is just mixed. We actually found, there's another picture, but it was not very clear, so I didn't share it with Danny. But in the drawer below the one that is open, we actually found a microwave part. 60 by 40 centimeters.
Well, hey, Wouter, maybe the desks are a little bit messy, but everyone has a big smile on their face. Right? They're having fun.
So that was at the beginning. You said that your two flagship products, Vantu's two flagship products, were the pig camera measurement kind of system, and then also the chicken weight scale.
Yeah.
And so you were in production now of those two products. Like, what can you talk a little bit about what the scale of production was and some of the challenges back then?
Yeah.
And let's see the transformation too of the before and after.
So we saw that this is the before, and then you sent me this is what it looks like now.
Correct. Yeah. So this is, I will tell a little bit more about it later, about all the steps that we did to end here. This is how it looks now, indeed. So you can see it's very clean, very organized. We already received quite some comments that could have been any operation also in the US or in Europe. Everybody's very happy with the level that they see in our factory right now.
Yeah, no, just seeing the stations and the organization, and I actually do have a quick video. The one that kind of shows the process of manufacturing these two products. I'm going to share that really quickly here.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yeah. So
Wouter, I have a potentially bonehead question, right? But there's two products that we saw in that video. There's the poultry scale, right, for weighing the chickens, and then there's pig vision for weighing the pigs.
If I was seeing correctly, you see two products. That's correct. You see the pig vision, and that's easily recognizable by the small camera that you see. And the other product is the gateway that they were producing.
Okay, all right. So I didn't see the scale.
No.
but I have a question about the scale nonetheless, and it looks like Aaron on the thread has a question as well. My question is simply, why can't the scale be used to weigh the pigs, or vice versa? Why can't the camera be used to weigh the chickens? Why are there two different technologies being used here?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, well, there's various differences between the animals. So I think that the chickens, for example, by nature, they're very inquisitive, very curious. So they will mount on a scale themselves because it looks shiny, it looks interesting. They will step on it themselves. With the pigs, it is a different case. They will probably try to eat it. They like to eat everything. I'm not sure if that is the origin of the different technology in those products. I can also imagine that a pig of 100 kilo and the size of pig that would require an enormous scale, and that logistical wise probably is not realistic to ship that from Colombia to US. So I think that is one of the reasons. Another reason is that the how do you say the genetic patterns that we have with scale and no, not with scales, with pigs, there are probably less. You have less possibilities. So more or less, let's to put it simple, every pig is more or less the same. So if you want to take a picture of a pig, then the silhouette is going to be always the same, and you can learn the camera to estimate the weight very well. And with poultry, there is a lot of more variation.
So it looks like Aaron's question was kind of answered there as well. I'd like to direct the conversation a little bit towards, the products are very cool, and the ag tech industry is fascinating to me. Actually, we're going to be doing a little ag tech, event coming up.
Yeah,
but,
IoT Recon 2 weeks from tomorrow. AgTech.
Yeah. So we can post a link to that somewhere. But I'm actually very curious with this scaling up of production from, because I've actually been in the in those shoes before of, okay, we've got our MVP, our engineered prototype. It looks like it works like it needs to, but now we need 15 of them. Now we need 50 of them. Can you just talk a little bit about that and how it really, how some of your work to optimize that assembly line played a part?
Yeah. So and just continuing from the picture that you saw and that you showed the before. So one of the biggest problems that I encountered, and besides the fact that it was not organized, is that the way of assembling those products was very individual. Everybody did their assembly in their own way. So if we were making a poultry scale or the smart weight or the pig vision at the time, we could actually have various variants, and not only from the outside, but especially from the inside. People that would do the soldering in their own way to put the silicon. And what the guys also did at that time, they were working like the whole week on like their program, all the products that they had to assemble. And then most likely on Friday, they would hand over all the products to quality control. So you would see the desk of quality control empty for the whole week, and then on Friday it was overloaded with equipment, and that has various bad consequences. And one is, of course, that if everybody does it in their own way, there is no good way, and there's probably a lot of the products that are let's say below the average quality, and that's what you don't want. You of course you want them at least to be all the same quality and preferred all of the highest quality. And another problem is if you just keep assembling your products, and then at the end of the week, quality and control encounters a problem in the product, you have to do everything all over again. So that is a huge disadvantage, and you can see the assembly with the assembly line in mind. If we have something wrong in the assembly line, there will be immediate feedback from quality control. And the biggest risk that we run there is that we have to maybe change 3 products that are still in the line, but that is we can manage that. That is quite okay. We at that time, so at this time when we moved to the assembly line, at the same time I discovered that it was very, very beneficial to work in tax-free zone, of which we will tell a little bit more, I think, after this one. But we opened Sento in the tax-free zone. It's the same company, but because we are in a tax-free zone, we had to create a different entity. And we did that because what most startups probably will recognize, if they are working just like us in their office or maybe in their garage, there's a point where you're too big for your kitchen or for your garage, but you're too small to take your production to China. And that's where most startups run into problems, because what they need at that point, they want a little bit of control over the process and especially the flexibility. And that is very hard to find. So we at the time decided to do the whole assembly line ourselves for the economical reasons, which we will talk a little bit more about later. But we've also decided, hey, we got all this cool stuff already in the tax-free zone, and we've got all this experience with building and scaling our products. Why don't we share all of this knowledge that we have with other companies? And they don't have to worry about this problem with inflexibility in control, because they just can say to us, hey guys, can you please take care of it, and we will do it. And the cool thing, I think, is that because we were a startup ourselves, we really know what we're talking about. We know that they require a lot of flexibility. We already prepared with every product that we're gonna have like 30 changes. We're used to that, and I think that's a big advantage.
I think that actually leads very well into Christina's question here, which I'll put up. How do you manage international logistics, and what do you do if the hardware fails and it's already deployed on the other side of the world?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. Well, international logistics is, of course, is a very broad theme. And I think we have learned ourselves during the startup phase how the network works with all electronic components. How's the Chinese market? How does it work? If you cannot buy it in China, where can you buy that? What are the rules of international logistics, and what costs do you have to think about? For example, I imported once in the beginning. I think in my first month, I imported something from Europe, and I thought I will just give it a go. And then I encountered that I had to pay like 30% import taxes, so that was a big mistake. But yeah, we've learned all about that. Another advantage that we have here is that we have like the contract conditions that we have. For example, with a company as DHL, we can use the contract conditions of our group company, so that offers some advantages here. The repair part is a very complex part, and you really have to think about it very well, because of course sending a poultry scale, for example, of that weighs like 3.5 kilos around the world, it costs a lot of money. In most cases, I would say, if you have a cheap product, in the case that we are in Colombia, but I think it also applies for the US, you see that repairing a product of electronics, like in the US market, is almost more expensive than just make another one. And it has to do with the high prices of just sending an equipment around through the different states in US. It's extremely expensive. And yeah, what we said is that we repair the units with the highest cost, and the other ones we send it back to Colombia to maybe use some components, but it's not economical feasible to repair them. I hope I answered your question, Christina. So what we like to do is to prevent that we have to repair them, because there's of course the key.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point of optimizing the line. And can you just for my sake just kind of walk me through the difference of like an industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 manufacturing floor, and where do you guys sit, and how is it transformed?
Danny, could you explain what is 1.0, 2.0?
Yeah, like I've heard industry 4.0, like full automation assembly line. What are these different stages? What are some optimizations you can make as you're, designing an assembly line? Because that's what you've done very well in Sento. That's meant for low to medium volume production of electronics.
Yeah. What we decided at this time, and we like split the production of our products, at least in like two phases. One is like let's say the PCB and the components that are assembled directly on the PCB, so it's called PCBA. And we said we went to the US, we went to the Bay Area, we went to China, we went to India. That was all back in 2018, and we saw everything, and we said, well, there's just one champion in this world in that part of the business, and that is China. There is no other place to go for that part. And yeah, we can of course buy the machine ourselves and put it in Colombia, but then what you will not have in Colombia is the whole ecosystem that has China with all the components. We just said that's another league. We're not going to play there. But then you have a second phase, and that is what I would say the assembly of like at one side the through hole components, that are the components that have these pins that go through the electronic board, and then at the bottom of the board you solder them. These are principally components that those high value machines cannot do. And you have all the mechanical assembly. So that is, well, you have this electronic board with all the components, but you still don't have a product. So you need to put it in casing, you need to connect it to some LED lights, you need to put a power connection there. And there we said, there we can really find a very good business, because if you have to ship the whole product from China around the world, totally assembled, it's going to be very expensive, not only for logistical reasons, but China is not as cheap as it was like 10 years ago. So that, for example, the labor cost in China is like 3-4 times the labor cost in Colombia. So we decided, no, that we're going to do in Colombia. We have a much better situation for that.
So you're doing the final assembly, testing, packaging, all in-house in Colombia. What are some?
Can I add to that, Danny? I've got a question about FATP. So one of the areas that I know companies care a lot about is the IP security of their firmware when it goes somewhere offshore or at least outsourced for manufacturing. So what is the process at Sento for flashing firmware, and how do you keep the firmware secure for your clients?
Well, what we did, we had the same like headache when we went to China, and I remember also in everything that we showed, there was always like a bit of tension. What can we show to these guys in China and also in India? And yeah, I remember really good at the time. There was a lot of worries in the group also to share the information, so we were very cautious with that. And especially with the two flagship products, like a temperature and humidity sensor, you can probably find many alternatives, but with the smart weight and big vision, we were very cautious. So we always decided to, let's say, separate the hardware from the firmware. So we would always keep apart, so that even if they get some information that they maybe should not have got, they can still not make the product out of there. For example, the big vision with all the intelligence that is behind there, you can identify immediately that it is a camera. But if you don't know how all the technology behind it works, you can make the camera, but it's not going to work. So that is the way how we try to do that. We see with our clients that we have now that sometimes they let us put the firmware, but they put some key in it. So even with the firmware that we flash into the products, it's still not working entirely, and they're doing like a last step in let's say the firmware. I hope I explained it correctly, because that's a little bit out of my league, but I know how they do that.
Yeah, no, that was very helpful, and it's a complex part of the puzzle for all manufacturers. So yeah, it's just important to be thinking about it, and I know you guys are.
Yeah, I would say then, Daniel, that we at the time we felt the most uncomfortable with both China and India. India, we said at the time, okay, they're not the champions, and we feel extremely insecure, so let's not go with India. There were some reasons to be in India at the time because of the poultry market, which is really interesting in India. And then we said, well, China also in the intellectual property part doesn't feel totally safe, but they're also the champions. So what we're going to do? So that is the way how we manage it. I think if you would compare that to, let's say, the Latin American countries, I could imagine that maybe guys in the US and Europe think that might also be a risk to do business with Latin American countries. But I would say that compared to China and India is much less risky.
Okay. And so I've got another one, Danny, if that's okay. And by the way, anyone listening in, feel free to lob in questions right now. This is open hours, this office hours. So anything that's on your mind, we can chat with Wouter about it. But until then, Wouter, one thing that I'm also curious about is for companies that are designing products, right? So they're in the engineering and design phase right now.
Yeah.
You live in the manufacturing side, so you see all the grim realities of what's hard to manufacture, what's easy to manufacture. What are some examples, maybe surprising examples, of things that companies can change in their design that lead to a lot of cost savings at the manufacturing step, right?
Yeah.
Non-linearities that have a lot of payout.
Well, there's various examples there. I think one of the most important ones that we've encountered is at some part, if you want to do the whole product yourself, at some part you have to invest in tooling. What do I mean with that? You have to invest, most likely, if you don't use it like a standard plastic case that is available in the market, you have to design a mold. And a mold, most likely already you need two molds, one for the bottom part of the casing and one from the top part. But in a lot of products, you will need more than two molds. And molds, especially in the United States, are extremely expensive. I would say in Colombia, you will get 6 times more value for the same amount of money that you spend in the mold. And the problem with the molds is that it is a technology that does not, well, no, it's not very, let's say, friendly to changes. You can do some changes, but if you want to change, let's say, in the wrong direction, you cannot change anything. And so that is, yeah, quite a big risk. And also, we see in general that companies, of course, they do a quick design that's very logical in the face, but they're in general very big. They have a lot of space still in their casing, and that will all work. That won't get you into problems if you create one product or a small batch of 10. But if you have to ship 10,000 products from one country to another, we will pay a lot of money on transport and logistics. What we did, and what was also now, let's say, part of our value proposition, our supplier, we have one plastic supplier here in Medellin that is partner of our let's say, our group. And they actually, since 2 years, if we develop something new, they will be there in the first meeting with our development. And they will already say in the beginning, think of this, think of that, don't forget this. And it's 1 hour for them to invest in the beginning, or maybe 2 hours for the provider. But that will prevent on both sides headaches if we really have to do changes.
All right. Well, that was a helpful answer, but I really wished that the answer wasn't planning. I hate planning, and it sounds like planning is the right way to save money in the manufacturing step. Oh, hey, over to you, Danny. Looks like we have a couple questions from the viewers. Oh, Danny, you're still muted.
Thank you. Yeah, so before I get to my questions, we got a LinkedIn question here. How do you handle regulatory testing from there? I'm assuming Colombia, FCC, ULC, BIS.
Yeah. With this part, we also said we don't have everything in-house. We don't have all knowledge. We have very intelligent guys, but they don't know about everything. So here we have in our network a few experts on the various teams. So, for example, the Big Vision and the Smart Way, they needed FCC registration also for the United States. And so at the time we partnered with a specialist on that area. So that's the one that already from the beginning advises on which things we need to take into account. I hope that answers it. So far with UL, we actually have some experience with that. CE so far not, and this also not. But the UL, we finished a project last week where we had to do with UL certification.
Great, thank you. I guess this kind of leads to one of my questions with regards to testing. So you mentioned already quality control and quality assurance. What are the difference of those? And then when the product does get to a point of like testing, like is this product working? Can you explain like some best practices for testing?
Yeah, well, we see two different things. Of course, we see the testing procedures of our own products that we've developed. Like, let's say, internally with the development department, with quality control and manufacturing, and then in combination with the advice we got from experts. So that's how we do the quality, and we made also like how we say a standard for the quality control on which points they need to check, so they know exactly what to do. With third-party clients that want to do products for us, we see it's really different what they want. Some they don't want to do any check. Some want to do the check in a house and they don't want to do it with us. And some, of course, they want to do the quality check with us because then we can also do the final packaging, and then they don't have to open it anymore, because if they have to open it in the US, it will cost them a lot of time and money. What we saw in China, that is still another league, I would say. We've seen factories that have like one building of I don't know how many square meters, where they can simulate all of the like experience that you will encounter with your product. So they can, for example, accelerate a farm condition. They can simulate that, and then in 2 days you can see what your product looks like as if it were 2 years in a farm. They will test the products also, and they will put it in on the water. They will test it on shocking, on so if you drop it on the ground, on changes in electricity. They can literally test everything. We're in our factory, we're not yet capable of testing everything. But of course, what we can do, because they are a partner of our network, if there is a client that really wants to test those kinds of things and wants to be really sure about it, we can just send it to our partner in China and do all the tests.
Okay. So what is before we get to some of these other questions, what is then like a functional test? What is the type of testing that you do for the products before you package it up? Can you explain like is it a pogo pin board, or do you have someone soldering or like testing with a voltmeter, or is there a program you run?
Yeah, so we run a program. You saw in the video, you saw the laptop where we run some things. We do some functional testing also. And then after that, we have a 24-hour quality check on all our products. So they're all connected. You saw quickly in the video, but then, yeah, you have to see many times to maybe see those details. But there is like a really big shell where we can test 250 products at the same time. And then the next day, all products that we have produced, they will, based on the serial, they will get a screenshot of the test also in their information in our ERP system. So if something happens into the future with the product, we always have the production results, so we can show, for example, no, all quality controls were fine, and we can use that information to analyze where maybe in the process something went wrong. So that's the testing that we do. In general, you see that they build like a lot of these. I'm not sure if you have seen that they build for every product. They build these cases of wood where you can connect various points and see if everything is working.
Yeah. Okay, great. So you don't necessarily need like a fixture like that because the volume isn't that high, or you do some of that. Yeah, for all the people out there that are getting started, they're at that point where they're about ready to scale up manufacturing to these early 100, 200, maybe 1,000 units. What is the level of complexity that they should be designing for?
I would say it depends a lot, of course, on the conditions where you're going to use the product. So if you would put it in your living room, it's a whole different case than if you put it in a farm, for instance. But I would say what we did, for example, in one of the projects that we did recently, we added in a design some small, how do you call it? Like, I don't know the name in English. It's like a small points that you can solder on the board, and they don't really have any function in the board, but you can use them to with a multimeter to quickly check the voltage between different points. And in that way, you already can do, I would say, the majority of the checks. Of course, what is really difficult are the things like testing then on lifetime, if what's going to happen with the product, if it's going to be working 2 years. That is very difficult. I would say one of the important things is also to be really conscious about the packaging of the product. It's tempting in the beginning to save on the packaging, but it can prevent you a lot of problems if you have very good protective packaging for your product.
So,
Thank
Danny,
you.
let's get to some of these questions because I want to make sure we have some time at the end to talk about the tax-free zone behind the airport, which I know some of our visitors are wondering about. But
Okay.
maybe we'll start with Christina's question.
All right. Pop that up here.
Yeah. Is your production full with the sister company for the animal industry, or are you manufacturing different products as well, Wouter?
Yeah, it's a good question, Christina. What we at the time when we developed the factory, for a lot more products. That was all before COVID. Everything was looking much more bright at the time. And then I think when we just moved to the tax-free zone, we just put the boxes, all the boxes of the moving on the ground, and then started the whole COVID period and the extreme large quarantine, as you know, that we had in Colombia. I think it was about 7 months. So we did get some drawback from that situation. It's absolutely not going bad, so we're still growing. Every year we're growing, but maybe not from the numbers that we have hoped before COVID. So at one time we decided last year that while we have this spare capacity in factory, why don't we use it? And that is a moment where we said, let's use it for other companies that are going to encounter the same challenges that we have already faced in the past. And let's not just offer the capacity that we have, but let's make it or make part of the value proposition the whole knowledge that we have. So the sourcing, the logistics, the design, all of those things. It can save you so many time if you don't have to think about all these things, and you can just let another company take care of that. I hope I answered it correctly, Christina.
Yeah, thanks. And then let's also address, what are some of the assumptions that you had about operations or products that ended up being incorrect? And following that, what past experience contributed to these incorrect assumptions?
That's a good one. I think there is various points. Yeah, of course, a sales forecast. I once said that a forecast is always wrong. I remember that I had a boss at that time, and when we had a presentation, he said to me, or he put in a presentation without me knowing that he put there, forecasts were always wrong. But no, it's very difficult, of course. I'm making a bit of a joke about it. But I think what was really difficult for us, I think, is that our products as well, they were not totally developed to 100%. They were still facing some problems, and we didn't think of that in the design phase. To give you guys an example, one of it is, I think, in the videos on Ioterra. At one point, we were facing a lot of problems with the smart way. They were the equipment, they were switching off. Well, at least it seemed by themselves, and we could not figure out what was happening there. And after analyzing that for about 3 months, I think we found out that close to the on and off button there was a LED light of the product, and the chickens, they were so inquisitive and triggered by the light that they started moving with their mouth around the LED light and started to bite it. And yeah, very close it was the on off button, so they switched the equipment off. And that, of course, yeah, that generated a lot of problems, but most likely, and this is just one example, these are developments that I think that you cannot think of in a design. You will just have to experience them, but they for sure have caused a little bit of kickback in the volumes.
Wouter,
yeah.
consider just putting a "Do Not Touch" sticker on the scale that the chickens could maybe read and obey.
Could help. No, I actually I remember that we were looking at what is the kind of colors that chickens can see, or hate, or love, maybe, and maybe just change the color of the letter. Maybe that would work, but it was a little bit more complicated than that. So no, that is for sure one of the reasons that the volumes were maybe less than we hoped. We still faced, I think, in the last months about 2% repairs. And yeah, and also I think one of the reasons it was really difficult is that we encountered that, for example, the US market is totally different than the Colombian market. And so where the US, for example, they are really absolutely not going to do anything in the farm. And why not? Because that is extremely expensive. 1 hour for any kind of work in a US farm will cost at least $25. And the case is a little bit different in Colombia. There it costs less, so you can still repair something. Yeah, that maybe brings me to the last point about this one. I think we really underestimated in the beginning the environment where our products were going to be. And like the question I received before, what are we going to do if something really goes wrong? So in the beginning, we were thinking we will repair everything ourselves. But to give you guys an example, sometimes the equipment would fail. We would send a technician out to Puerto Gaitan, which is a far city. You have to travel with an airplane to Bogota, then you have to rent a car, travel for 4 hours, and then to encounter in the farm that the only thing what was wrong with the equipment was that we had to change the batteries. So we had to go to this whole transition of doing ourselves the repairs to a self-service model. And I think we really underestimated that in the beginning.
Great question, and thank you for the answer. So I have a kind of a more technical question about one of the products and the process of going through, because I actually in a previous project in my life have had to work with scale of some sort. We were measuring consumables, and we had to use a load cell, and just with mechanical components that need to be calibrated. How do you go about that process, and how do you keep, let's say, a kitchen scale or a chicken scale calibrated throughout when you're shipping it out and then once it's in the field?
Yeah, and it's cool that you have this experience, because it's extremely difficult with load cells. Also there we found out, and we have like a cover of some kind of plastics over the scale to protect it from the environment. And we saw also that based on the different temperatures that you get into the farms, it can be almost in a 0 to 0 degrees in the mountains, 0 Celsius, but it can also easily get to 40 degrees. For example, the plastics, they were like, how do you say it, contracting or expanding, and that would influence also the load cell. So there's a lot of difficult things there. But what we do now, within any shipment that we do, we send like a service package, and there we always send like a 1 kilo weight. And with that weight, they can calibrate the scales themselves. We have like instruction videos, and the farmers can do that themselves. That works very well in Colombia. In the US, it's a little bit more difficult because of what I just explained. That it's very expensive to do the calibration. But yeah, that's how we do it at this point.
Okay, so someone every day just pops in there and drops the 1 kilo weight.
No, it's like with every batch. Like I would say a poultry batch will take about, I think, 40 days, more or less. So every batch you have to clean the whole barn because of biosecurity reasons, and that's also the point where you can calibrate the scales.
Cool, thank you. Aaron's making some funny comments.
Yeah, we've got ghost chickens, we got rubber chickens, any type of chicken you want. Looks like we're at about 5 minutes here. So let's talk a little bit about the Zona Franca, the tax-free zone. What is it? Why is it? Does it only exist in Colombia? Just kind of the high level that the folks here might not know about.
Yeah, no, the tax-free zone is a thing that is known in different countries. And well, for example, the most, I think, one that we know is the ones that you encounter in some airports where you can buy stuff with a lot of discount. In Colombia, there's various. What you need to know about is that one thing, a tax-free zone, well, it's considered not Colombian national territory. So physically, it is Colombian territory, but administratively, it's another country. And that offers a lot of advantages. So we can import stuff, not only from abroad. So from abroad, we can import stuff. We don't have to pay import taxes, and we don't have to pay any taxes or duties with customs. And with components that come from the national territory, for example, from Medellin or from Bogota, we can also import them without any taxes. That is a huge advantage because in Colombia that is 19%. I know in the Netherlands it's 21. I think in the US interstate taxes are about 7, but they are very dependent on the states. Besides that, you can leave the goods that you import into the tax-free zone. You can just leave it there for a lot of time, and that has especially in, let's say, cash flow wise, a lot of interesting aspects. And not so for US, but for especially companies in Colombia, it has a huge tax flow advantage because it means that you can leave the goods with us, and only when you need them, you have to pay these import taxes when you take the goods out of the tax-free zone. Besides that, any operation that we do in a tax-free zone or any service that we give to a client or a product, we don't have to pay any duties on that. So that is really cool. It's like if you would ship a product that you would normally do from China to US, for example, you will ship it to Colombia, and for you guys, it's almost like your product is in customs, but while it's in customs, we transform it to a final product, and that without any added taxes. So it's an extreme advantage. Yeah, and I'm not sure if you guys all know about the import taxes on the electronics in the US. They can be quite heavy on some components. What the cool stuff is if you ship a final product from the tax-free zone to US, it can have the majority of, let's say, Chinese components in there, or the majority of the value. But because of the fact that we give a major transformation to the product, so the product is actually from changing from a electronic board and some components to a physical product, we can say that it is made in Colombia. And that is really cool because then you can ship it to US without paying import taxes.
Very cool. Oh, that's fascinating, and I think is definitely worth looking at with the current state of global affairs.
Well, a quick follow on from my side. I get the reason why a company would want to be in the tax-free zone, right? No taxes, great, right? And even why a company would want to do business with someone in the tax-free zone. But why did Colombia create the tax-free zone?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, well, maybe there are some dark reasons also there, but I think it's primarily to create jobs. So, for example, besides Medellin, I think what they did with the tax-free zone in the Medellin International Airport was to generate a lot of business and jobs for the nearby town, which is called Rio Negro. But maybe Christina knows it. I'm not sure if she's still listening. I think that is the primary reason to stimulate work and economy in a different place.
Great.
Well, I can see that Aaron's theory is to coax you into moving from the Netherlands into Colombia. So maybe that was part of the rationale as well.
I think a little follow-on question from Eric, which I'm not, or Aaron, I'm not quite sure I understand. Is there space available for multiple small factory-sized companies? As in, is this potentially like to grow the Sento operations, or
And you'll
I need
have
some
to
more
answer
clarity
in
on
20
this.
seconds, Wouter.
Yeah. Sorry? I cannot hear you, Daniel. You're muted.
Sorry, I said you'll have to answer quickly in half a minute or so.
Well, we developed a factory for the whole company to move just before the COVID period. The situation changed, so we left most of the company in Medellin. They're working from home or from other offices. So we actually have 2 floors available, which you guys saw, where we actually play football in this moment. We still have a lot of space to grow. and also we still have the possibility to scale up to 3 shifts. So before we think of opening something else, we're good for now.
Awesome. Let me just do a quick segue here and just say, if you have more questions for Wouter, please go to our forum here. And this is the link directly to this conversation. You can ask Wouter any questions and he'll be able to answer those in real time. And this will also be fun. On that note as well, if you would like to create an Ioterra account, you're involved in IoT product development or product development, you can talk to us, and we're going to be interviewing new Ioterra members that would like to jump on and tell the community a little bit about what they do. Thank you so much, Wouter, today for this really awesome conversation. You've got some experience that a lot of people don't have and is extremely valuable in the space.
You're very welcome. It was extremely cool to be here. Yeah, happy that I could share this information with everybody. You guys obviously saw like a quick video of the operations. I invite you, if you want a virtual factory tour, or even better like the Denny's did, visit us in the tax-free zone and you can have a tour. No, I really hope that we can help other companies in the network with everything that we have to offer. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much, Wouter. Really enjoyed getting to interrogate you.
Any closing comments, Daniel?
Nothing from my end. So, like you said, after party at community.ioterra.com if anyone has further questions for Wouter. And then tune back again in a week. More fun live office hours to come.
All right.
Oh, yeah. And,
thank you, everybody.
And then IoT Recon tomorrow. For anyone who's interested in wildfires and IoT, or just IoT at the front edge of government and public projects in general, we have an event co-hosted with Ioterra, put on by Hardware Massive. It'll be tomorrow, Wednesday at 4:30 Pacific, under the IoT Recon series.
Daniel, I think you should share the map of the NASA of the wildfires in the world at this moment. I was shocked when I saw that. It looks like the whole world is on fire. So I'm extremely interested for the session for tomorrow.
That's a good point. I think I'll grab that wildfire map and show the thousands upon thousands of wildfires that are going on at this moment. That'll be a good one to add onto the link.
Cool.
Oh, man. All right. Thank you.
Guys, thanks everybody for being here. I hope I can still answer some questions in the coming days or weeks, and hope to see you guys. Thanks.